I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: why is Allan Piper wrong about false allegations? Now, Allan Piper, if you haven't heard of him, is the senior politics producer at Now This. They're those guys that produce those little videos, those viral videos. You see a lot of them on Facebook exploring political issues. Just like the right have got their people making their viral content, the left have got their viral content as well. It sort of pops up all over the place. The Now This videos tend to be quite popular. Well, I certainly see a lot of them popping up in my feed from friends. And this guy, Allan Piper, senior politics producer, he made a video, or he featured in a video last week, well, I saw it last week, talking about rape allegations, and he's a big proponent of this believe all women approach to this issue. And basically, we should take an allegation as true, and we should treat it as being true, and we should start from basically an assumption of guilty until proven innocent is really the underlying assumption here. I want to focus really on one particular analogy that he makes about a rape allegation and the question of believability and whether we believe people. But before I explore that, I want to just touch on a couple of other things I've seen floating around on social media in the last couple of weeks. One is a lot of people have been repeating this claim that false rape allegations are so statistically small that effectively they shouldn't ever stop us from believing all allegations, because the studies indicate to us, I guess depending on which study you choose to accept, somewhere between 2 and 10% of rape allegations are false. So it could be as high as 10 out of every 100 allegations are false allegations. It could be as low as 2 out of every 100. But basically people are putting in varying figures out there, and they're saying, well, because the majority of rape allegations are true, we should treat or start from this position of guilt effectively is surely established. We believe all allegations, and that's the position that we should start from. No, that's not how you should use that statistic at all. First of all, I find this really troubling in the fact that this use of statistics in this way completely ignores the true human cost that's involved here. It's very easy to reduce human persons and human suffering down to pure statistical content, and when you see it in this dry, numbers-driven way on a page, it can be very easy to forget that every 10 out of 100 of those people who are affected and have their lives destroyed, and not just their lives, but probably their families, if they've got families, their marriages, their relationships, their work life, their employment, all those kind of things destroyed by false allegations, it can be very easy to forget that they are real human persons. And that those real human persons, so if you had, 10 out of every 100 allegations are false, and you have, 1,000 allegations or official rape complaints made to the police each year, then potentially 100 of those are false, and that's 100 lives that are being harmed by this. And that's serious. I mean, even if it's a smaller number, those are real human persons and real lives. And to me, there's something really not good about diminishing the potential for human suffering in this way. It would be just the same as if someone said, well, only 33% of women get raped or sexually assaulted, the other 66% don't. So really, we shouldn't be taking rape that seriously because the vast majority of women don't get raped in their lives. That would be an awful way of actually looking at the data and responding to the problem of rape and sexual assault, just as I think it's truly awful to try and diminish and minimize the great evil of accusing someone falsely of sexual assault or rape. That's a very, very serious form of evil to impose upon another person's life. The other thing too about the statistic and the way that people are often using it is they say, well, because the percentage of false allegations is so low, we should just assume that all allegations are true. No, that statistic is of no help to you if you are trying to determine the truth or the falsity of an allegation. The fact that the vast majority of allegations that are made are true, and let's say only 10 out of every 100 are false, that does not help you determine in any way whether or not the person in front of you right now who is making an allegation against another person of sexual assault and rape is actually telling the truth, and whether their allegation is part of the 90 out of 100 that are true or the 10 out of 100 that are false. So that's why you don't start with a presumption of guilty until proven innocent. The most moral position to adopt is to say, right, this is serious, not this is true because you've said it. That is a very dangerous position to start from. The correct position and the moral position, I believe, is to say, this is serious, and this is a very serious situation, and we need to investigate, and we need to actually test the credibility, and we need to try and corroborate what you're saying, and to actually ascertain whether or not this is true. So I think the moral position, as I said, to start from is to say this is serious, not this is true. And just the same way as, let's say, for example, we did a statistical analysis where we broke down the percentage of people who made false rape allegations, and we discovered that, say, 90% of false allegations of rape and sexual assault were made by European women. It would be just as wrong and awful to say, well, you don't have to believe any European women who say that they've been raped, because, you know, so many of them are represented in the false allegation statistics. We should basically treat their claims with a level of dubiousness that we don't treat other ethnicities when they make that same claim with. You know, we have a greater level of seriousness we treat their claims with, and we treat these ones as if they're not true at all. That would be just as wrong. That's not how you should use that statistic. It doesn't tell you anything about the falsity or the truth of the allegation in front of you. It doesn't actually aid you in any way in your quest for the truth in this particular or any particular specific allegation of sexual assault and rape. You've got to start with the presumption of innocence and then try and test the credibility and explore and corroborate if you can. Now let's get on to the particular analogy that Allan Piper makes in his video, and I want to explore this because I've already seen people commenting on it and using it, and I'm sure it's going to be used again by other people in the coming weeks and months as this debate unfolds around the whole question of allegations and how we should treat them. So let's actually look at what he says.
It's also possible that people can burn down their own houses for insurance, but you know what? When we hear that someone's house burnt down, our immediate reaction is to assume that that person is a survivor of a terrible thing that happened. In the same way, our default position must be to expect that women are telling the truth about this.
I think this analogy of a house fire is completely flawed if you were trying to make a comparison to someone making an allegation of sexual assault and rape. First of all, let's take a step back and examine this idea. Do we really believe a person at face value? If they were to just make a statement, even your oldest and most reliable and most trustworthy friend, if they were just to say to you one day, my house burnt down, do you take that statement at absolute face value? I don't think any of us do that, actually. I think the first thing we do is we try and test the credibility of the claim. We might not do this with some deep investigation, or let's call on the fire forensic team to investigate these claims and let's go to the scene right now, but we do ask basic questions to try and corroborate this particular claim that's being made. You know, tell me more. I was only at your house last week and it was fine. What do you mean your house burned down? And what we're doing there is we're actually probing for more of the actual details that are essential to flesh out that story and that claim to ensure that it's credible, that maybe our friend is not just pranking us or that something else has gone wrong in their life and they're confused. We actually want to know for certain that what's being told to us is true. Also, I would argue that if you were in a situation where, say, you'd only just been at your friend's house, and let's say you arrived home and 10 minutes later they rang you and said the house is burnt down, you would be even more skeptical, quote unquote. And what I mean by that is you would say probably, what do you mean the house burnt down? We were only just at your house and it was fine. There was no fire. What happened? You know, you would not automatically assume, oh, okay, that's fine, the house is burnt down. You do probe, you do seek more information to actually ascertain the credibility. But leaving all that aside, here's the much bigger flaw with trying to use someone saying, my house burnt down, and comparing that claim to the claim of someone saying, I was sexually assaulted and raped. The difference between those two claims is when someone tells you their house burnt down, they are not accusing another person of arson of burning their house down. So if you want to make these two analogies actually more aligned with each other, then comparing a house fire to the situation of an allegation of sexual assault and rape would be more like this. Your friend rings you and they say, my house burned down and it was an arson attack and the arsonist was Brett Kavanaugh. I know he did it. And in this particular case here, you would have someone saying, well, I've got 3 witnesses who can corroborate my story, and the 3 witnesses can't actually corroborate the story. And then you're sort of saying, well, I don't know exactly when it happened, but it definitely did happen in a particular period some years ago. You see, these things would cause you to actually raise serious questions about that, and you would treat that claim very differently. If someone says to you, my house is burnt down, that's serious, and you test that initially. But if someone said to you, I think that, Jane Smith is an arsonist and she burnt my house down, you would not automatically assume that Jane Smith burnt the person's house down. I don't know of anyone who would act that way. Our first assumption or our first response would be to say, okay, hold on a minute, this is pretty serious what you're accusing Jane Smith of here. We need to make sure that this actually is. What is the proof that you have that Jane Smith actually burnt your house down because of the seriousness of this allegation? Now, I would argue the same is true when it comes to sexual assault and rape. Because of the seriousness of the allegation, you should start from this assumption of innocence until the story has actually been corroborated and shown to be credible. So if the allegation has been shown, yes, this is actually a credible allegation, and yes, there is witnesses or proof or evidence of some kind to corroborate what's being said here, then yeah, we should be treating this as more serious than simply a straight out allegation that someone has made. The presumption of innocence until proven guilty is a really, really important thing, and one of the things people who keep highlighting this whole idea that only very few people make false allegations, one of the things that they are overlooking, and this is a really important point, is that the social conditions that you live in will have a big bearing on whether or not there is an increase or a preponderance of false allegations of any sort, not just rape and sexual assault, but about any sorts of issues are being made. So, for example, if you go back to the period in the history of Salem where the witch trials were going on, there were a lot more false allegations being made of witchcraft against people than what there are being made today in Salem. Why? Because the social conditions were very different. And so the current social conditions, if we start interfering with these and changing these and saying, well, we're going to throw out that moral precept that we should start with the presumption of innocence until actually proven guilty. And now we're just going to say that anytime someone accuses another person of sexual assault and rape, we are going to treat that as proof of guilt unless proven otherwise. Guess what's likely to happen? It is almost certain that you are going to have an increase in the number of false allegations that are being made. Why? Because the social conditions that you have created are now ripe for that increase to happen. There are going to be more people who, for whatever reason, whether it's they're just dishonest, they're nefarious, they're trying to target a person for revenge, they might have some psychological issue where they make false allegations, or maybe they're just confused and they're accusing the wrong person. But if you actually say to people, hey, we will believe every allegation that's made against another person of sexual assault or rape, guess what's going to happen? You're going to create a fertile social environment for more people to start making those false allegations. Whereas at the moment, the fact that we start from the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, even though that means that can be a harder process for the genuine victims of sexual assault and rape to actually have to go through to try and to corroborate what they're saying, that's presumption of innocence until proven guilty is a really, really important protective mechanism for our society. It protects us, and particularly in our quest for justice, for genuine victims, it stops us and prevents us from going into hysterical mob mentality, into witch hunt mode, where in the process of seeking justice, we do great injustice. You know, the end does not justify the means here at all. And that's why we should start with the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And that's why, as I said, and particularly this whole idea of a friend coming to you and saying, my house burnt down, is not a valid analogy, because your friend is not accusing another person of being an arsonist, of having actually committed this heinous act of property destruction. Or in the case of sexual assault and rape, this truly heinous act of violation against another human person. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on PayPal or Patreon. There's a link for both in the video description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.